Thanks again so much for watching Cooper Landing Fishing Guide here on YouTube. It means so much to me if you would subscribe down below. Also, like the video, comment as well. That really helps spark some great conversations. I learn a lot by talking to you guys, and hopefully you guys also give me some great ideas for some upcoming videos. Thanks again for watching. All right, so we're out on the Kenai River once again today. I've got my Spey rod. Just going to do a quick introduction on what Spey casting is and a little bit about Skagit casting and casting for trout or trout Spey. All right, so we'll go over a couple of basics of Spey fishing and some of the different casts and how we'll use them on the water. For our purposes today, we're going to be doing some trout Spey fishing on a Skagit line. There's generally two different types of Spey lines, Skagit lines and Scandinavian lines, or longer belly lines. And for our purposes, using Skagit here, the reason we like Skagit a lot, usually a heavier, more dense fly, sometimes with some weight. You're going to have a sink tip, which is going to be fairly heavy, going to promote the fly sinking. And then your really aggressive short Skagit head. Behind that Skagit head, this, in my case, this red line here will be your shooting line or your running line, followed by some backing. So we'll start off with some of the advantages of Spey casting and using Spey rods and Spey lines, even if you're using a single hand rod. Some of the biggest advantages are you can cast in areas that have limited back casting room. So where a single hand overhead cast, you'd run into trees behind you. Spey casting allows you to use the area around you, the water, to help make your cast so you don't have to cast behind you and then cast forward again like a traditional fly cast. Another big advantage, generally you can cast a little bit further without a bunch of false casts and back casts and things like that. So anytime you can cast further and you don't have to make a lot of false casts, that means your fly is going to be in the water a lot more, fishing a lot more for you, which means you potentially could catch more fish. So a lot of days out here I have the pleasure of working with people who have never Spey cast, sometimes never even fly fished in their lives, and it really gives me the opportunity to showcase not only the sport of fly fishing but also Spey fishing and Spey casting. And so the challenge for me is being able to introduce people to the rods, to the style, and get them casting competently in a very short period of time so that they can catch some fish. We'll talk about all the different casts, and I'm going to do a couple here just to show you the varieties of casts. That happens to be a snap T or a snap C. Our next cast we'll do what's called a double Spey. So we'll do a little double Spey here, just give you an idea of what that looks like. You'll have your snake rolls, parry pokes, so lots of different casts and varieties of casts you can use when Skagit casting or Spey fishing. And the way I like to think about all these casts, why we use all these different casts, there's a couple different reasons. The main reason is the wind direction. So the wind today is kind of blowing upstream and downstream on me. It's kind of swirling. Fish just came up right in front of us. So one of the main factors will be wind, and so you want to make sure you're casting on your leeward side, or you're going to cast on the side that is, downwind. So let's say the wind is at my back right now. I want to make sure I cast everything off my downstream side. If the wind's in my face, I want to make sure I cast everything on the upstream side. This is mainly so that you don't hit yourself with the fly when you're casting. So your upstream casts will promote more of a downstream cast. So in this case, I'm going to do an upstream shoulder snap T or snap C, which promotes more of a downstream cast. If I want to cast straight across or slightly upstream or even way upstream, or depending on how fast the water is and how deeply sunk I want my fly to be. That'll kind of determine how far up I cast. But if I want to cast, you know, above me a little bit or straight across, I'll use my downstream shouldered cast. So in this case, I'll just throw a snake roll straight across the river there. So you see the wind will determine what side you're going to cast on. What direction you want to cast will also determine what side you want to cast on. And now let's talk about what each spey cast kind of is and why they're kind of set up the way they are. All spey casts kind of center around the mechanics of a roll cast. And since you can't roll cast very effectively across the river, so it's very hard for me to, you know, roll cast this thing across the river very well and be able to shoot line. So these Skagit or these spey casts, or in this case Skagit casts, are set up to be able to reposition your fly, you know, in the most efficient manner to get it right where you need it to be to basically make a more powered roll cast. The reason we do these kind of motions is for one simple reason: to set your anchor in position, or your fly in kind of conjunction with your leader and sink tip. Your anchor, what's stuck on the water, it's going to reposition your anchor either below you or above you. And these motions are the most efficient way to get the anchor exactly where you'd like it. So if I want my anchor above me and about a rod length away, all right, using that snap T or snap C or, you know, parry poke, things like that, this motion is going to get that fly exactly above me about a rod length away. Same thing with like your double spey, where you want the fly below you about a rod length away. That motion is going to set your fly and your anchor up exactly where you would like it. So all of these different motions in spey casting are nothing more than just setting up your anchor, for starters, in the correct position. So now that we understand the initial motion of your spey cast, or setting up your spey cast, now we can kind of talk about what's called the sweep. And the way I like to describe it is, you know, you're coming around to either side, basically off of your opposite shoulder to the strong side that you want to cast from, basically adding energy to your line. Okay, so as I get my anchor set up where I want because of the wind for me. Now I'm coming around, adding a little bit of energy to that line. In this case with Skagit lines, using the water tension to add a little bit of energy to my line, so I can bring it to my right shoulder and effectively have a more powerful roll cast off of my right hand side. And really that's all that spey casting is. And once you're able to, you know, get the fly out there, I mean, the number one goal you should have is simply turning the fly over. So even if your setup isn't perfect, your sweep isn't perfect, even your forward cast isn't perfect, as long as you can turn that fly over, get it to come tight relatively quickly, use that current to start swinging across the river, then you'll be in business. Then you'll have a chance at catching fish. And that's usually my main goal when guiding kind of novice anglers or people that are brand new to spey and Skagit fishing. And once you can get that fly turned over, you can get a little bit of line out there, you're definitely in business. And you don't have to shoot a ton of line out there. You know, these Skagit lines are, you know, 22, 23, 24 feet long. And your sink tip's about 10 feet long, and usually your leader's 4, 5, 6 feet long. So you're out there quite a distance already without having to shoot line way across the river. So you don't need to be able to shoot a ton of line to be able to effectively catch fish. In a previous clip, we had a fish jump, you know, less than 10 feet from me, so I wouldn't even need the entire Skagit head and sink tip to effectively catch that fish. So it's not so much about the distance with Skagit casting and spey casting. A lot of it is getting that fly to turn over. There it is. Nice. Wasn't sure if he had it or not. Good head shake on this one. Great fish. Great fish. Got a video for this fly, just haven't posted it yet. Oh, very nice. Looks like a dolly. Ah, yeah. Big Dolly Varden, definitely a different fight than those rainbows. Definitely one of the bigger, nicer dollies you'll see out here for sure. Just a gorgeous fish. So this fly, I haven't made a video for it yet, but it just caught me a nice big chunky dolly. He's ready. Awesome fish.